What if the only way to reclaim your sanity, your very sense of self, was to do the one thing everyone says is impossible to cut every tie, block every message, and vanish, even if it means walking through fire? Have you ever loved, trusted, or relied on someone so intensely that leaving seemed not just painful, but unthinkable, until you realized the person you cared for was slowly poisoning your soul, warping your reality, and turning your life into a battleground? Tonight, we're cracking open the most misunderstood, most agonizing act of escape, the no contact rule. Why do survivors say it's the only true path to healing after a narcissist? Why does staying, even out of kindness or hope, pull you deeper into their web? And why does every phone call, every apology, every sly text after the breakup feel like a knife, reopening wounds you thought would heal? You're about to hear the hard, unflinching truth, the logic and the pain behind saying goodbye for good. The reason even the strongest break, relapse, and doubt themselves, and why, no matter how much it hurts, no contact is sometimes the only move that can save your sanity, your dignity, and your life. If you're ready to understand, not just with your mind, but in your bones, why silence is not cruelty, but survival, stay with me. What follows will expose every hidden trap, every excuse, and every heartbreaking lesson about leaving a narcissist behind for good. To embark on the no contact rule with a narcissist is to engage in an act of profound courage and self-rescue, a wrenching process so misunderstood and underestimated by outsiders, by well-meaning friends, even by survivors themselves, that its true emotional magnitude is rarely articulated. After months or years, sometimes entire lifetimes, ensnared in the invisible spider web, spun by a narcissist, every fiber of your being has been bent to their will, your desires whittled down, your sense of self scarred and splintered by relentless gaslighting, dangling promises, shifting blame, and the never-ending cycle of idealization and devaluation that both intoxicates and eviscerates you, a cycle whose very purpose is to replace your inner compass with their voice, ensuring that even when you are physically apart, their worldview, their judgments, their moods, continue to govern your actions, your thoughts, your very definition of reality. This is why no contact is not arbitrary distance, but the essential, radical withdrawal of your psychic life from their orbit, a lifeline so critical for recovery that without it, countless survivors remain locked for years in vain hope, yearning for closure, for the words, the apology, the moment of recognition that never, ever comes. And in the absence of this lifeline, the narcissist's manipulations, like ghostly echoes, replay relentlessly in the mind. Was it really that bad? Am I the abuser? Could I have fixed it? No contact is the only proven remedy to this psychological poison. A clear, unambiguous shutting of all the doors and windows through which the narcissist's influence seeps in, no matter their pleas, their crises, or their apparent turning over a new leaf. Because what's at stake is not mere comfort, but the reclamation of your autonomy after trauma so systemic that it rewires the very architecture of self-trust, replacing your healthy instincts with a gnawing self-doubt that leaves you vulnerable to further cycles of abuse. The hard truth, the reality that is as brutal as it is liberating, is that narcissists do not change through negotiation or compassion. Each attempted compromise, each hopeful conversation, each extraction of promises or closure only provides new openings for them to sink their hooks deeper. Text messages that seem innocuous, but are laced with barbed guilt or false urgency. Mutual friends manipulated as emissaries. Desperate phone calls, voicemails dripping with anger, love, threat, or tears. These are not gestures of reconciliation, but weapons of psychological siege, all designed to keep you emotionally tethered and uncertain, unable to break free from the cycle of self-blame, longing, or regret. So the no contact rule requires a rigor that, especially in the early days, feels like cutting off a part of your body, blocking their number, erasing old emails, avoiding common social spaces, sometimes even ending other relationships, simply because the narcissist will use any connection, any vector, to reassert their dominance. And as you enforce these boundaries, the full weight of trauma surfaces, revealing not just the pain of their absence, but the deeper agony of what you've lost inside yourself. Your hope, your joy, your ability to believe in love or friendship, your faith in your own intuition, which is why so many relapse, driven by loneliness, nostalgia, guilt, or the siren song of maybe this time. But every new point of contact, every message responded to, every just one call reopens the wounds, reignites the gaslighting, and starts the cycle anew, often even more insidiously subtle, because the narcissist, faced with true loss of control, will escalate. Sudden apologies, love bombing, threats to self-harm, or career sabotage, attempts to malign your reputation with others, or emotional blackmail, so sophisticated that you question whether you are, in fact, abandoning someone who is just flawed, just wounded, just in need of forgiveness. This is the test, and it is excruciating, not just because you miss them, but because the person you fell for, the parent you longed to please, the friend who once championed you, created an initial reality so intoxicating, so all-consuming, that cutting them off means mourning not just a person, but a version of yourself that feels irretrievable. Yet, every therapist, every survivor who has crossed this desert of withdrawal, every researcher on trauma bonds and CPTSD will tell you, only in that agony, only in the disciplined preservation of silence, does the hold of the narcissist begin to recede, revealing not the monster, but a small, hungry, endlessly manipulative child, whose power lay only in your willingness to supply what they could never give in return: empathy, selfhood, the right to be more than their mirror. And as the weeks pass, slowly, awkwardly, unevenly, you start to hear your own thoughts as your own. You begin to discern which desires are truly yours, which mistakes were projections, which wounds are genuine scars, and which are myths constructed to keep you compliant. And perhaps hardest, you grieve. Not only what you endured, but what was taken from you without consent. Years you cannot recover. Boundaries you must now reforge from scratch. Relationships destroyed by triangulation or rumor. Dreams deferred by the need to manage their moods, their crises, their insatiable hunger for attention and power. Socially, the cost can be enormous. You may lose mutual friends, family, entire support networks that cannot, or will not, see through the mask. The narcissist, enraged by your refusal to play the game, may mobilize smear campaigns, paint themselves as the victim of your alleged coldness or abuse, leaving you isolated, bewildered, or forced to defend yourself against half-lies and distortions, when all you wanted was peace. Yet, as you stay the course, as you endure the sharp pain of withdrawal and the dull ache of loneliness, moments of clarity begin to surface like breaths of fresh air after years underwater. You realize your life is not a stage for someone else's drama, that peace is possible, that healing is slow, but real, and you are worth more than a life spent perpetually negotiating your existence with someone who will never see you as fully human. The most brutal and liberating truth is this: no contact is not about punishing the narcissist. It is your act of refusing to negotiate your sanity, your truth, your possibility of future happiness with someone incapable of respecting any boundary but their own. It is the daily, sometimes minute to minute act of defending your life from their hunger, their delusion, their endless need to conquest and consume. There will be setbacks. You may relapse, you may doubt, you may weep in the dark for the fantasy that will never come true. But each moment you hold the line is a step closer to a life where your value is not conditional, your peace is not negotiated, and your freedom is not on loan to someone else's ego. In the end, that is what no contact is truly for. Not just escape, but the slow, painstaking rediscovery of who you were before the narrative of survival. Your right to heal, to connect, to build, to trust, and most of all, to never again confuse love with submission, hope with denial, or presence with permission.